and welcome to this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz podcast. I'm Josh Hennig. Thanks for checking out this week's edition. We're going to get into the allegations against 49ers linebacker Reuben Foster. The NBA playoffs are underway, as well as new details coming out for Dwayne Johnson's DC Comics movie Black Adam, along with the latest information on Disney's acquisition of Fox Studios and what that means for the Marvel movies moving forward. So let's open the six-pack of topics and get started. So the news has come out of more information about what the DA's office is charging Reuben Foster with. So it came out recently, a couple months ago actually, that Reuben Foster had been arrested on charges of domestic violence. Well, more information has come to the forefront about what exactly he's being charged with. So according to reports, Reuben Foster dragged his living girlfriend by her hair, physically threw her out of the house, and hit her in the head 8 to 10 times. Foster is going to be facing more than 11 years in prison if he is convicted. Of course, the 49ers released a statement saying that, they're aware of the disturbing charges, their words, not mine, and they'll continue to follow the serious matter. The 49ers can say all they want, but this is the risk that you take when you give people with bad backgrounds opportunities. We saw what has happened in the past, for example, with a Greg Hardy. You look at a guy like Greg Hardy, we all heard the allegations. We all knew about his issues on and off the field. But the Cowboys gave him a chance anyway, and despite the fact he was productive, it hurt him in the long run. We're also seeing now what came out on Thursday that Vontaze Burfict has officially been suspended 4 games for violating the NFL's policy on performance-enhancing substances. Burfict is a guy who's gotten in trouble for a lot of dirty hits on the field, a guy who got in trouble in college at Arizona State. Again, a history of problems. We're constantly giving people chances because they have talent, not because they even deserve said opportunities and chances. Look, I'm all for giving people a second chance. Tiger Woods, what he did, cheating on his wife over 100 times and treating people the way he did. Look, he's not a good person, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve opportunities moving forward. He didn't commit any actual crime that makes him a danger to other people. People like Vontaze Burfict, people like Reuben Foster, Greg Hardy, these are guys who have a history of doing bad things. They have a history of hurting people, of doing things unethically and illegally. It's more than just 1 or 2 incidences. At some point, the hypercriticism that we have of some of these athletes as people has got to stop. What most people don't understand, despite the fact that people love Michael Jordan, is that Michael Jordan was greatly entitled. We've heard numerous stories about affairs, about how he mistreated people, how he doesn't tip people. Does that make him a criminal? No, it just makes him a guy who has very bad moral compass, and he has no scruples, and he would be considered unethical. Some people would consider that selfish, a pig, whatever you want to call it. He's just not a good guy. Charles Barkley, on the other hand, people look at him as, Charles, he's brash, he's indignant. But Charles is the opposite of Michael. Charles is very nice. He's very gregarious with his time. He's a very good tipper. I met Charles Barkley once with a buddy of mine. We walked right up to him at a local establishment that we were at, and we introduced ourselves. He shook our hands. It was great to meet you. I took a picture of him with my buddy who was a huge fan of his. I thanked him, and Charles was like, hey, no problem, anytime, man. Nice as could be. Did not mind being bothered. There's a lot of athletes who do mind being bothered. Charles isn't one of them, but yet we have this attitude like Charles is a jerk or a bad guy because he's had a few incidences at bars and other places where things got out of control. But yet those incidents could happen to anybody who puts himself out in the public as much as Charles does. From everything that I have seen in my own eyes and everything I've read, Charles is actually a very good guy and is a good person and actually gives a darn about people. I just don't like athletes keep getting opportunities when they don't deserve them. There's so many people in the world who don't get chances to pursue their dreams or pursue their goals or get the job that they wanted. It has nothing to do with their ability to do the job. It's because somebody else is getting that opportunity who didn't deserve it. And I say they didn't deserve it because that person who's getting the opportunity has a colored past or doesn't work as hard as the other person does. There's plenty of linebackers out there who could do the job that Vontaze Burfict and Reuben Foster do. But because they keep getting second chances, because somebody in a front office wants to overlook their colored past to give them a chance based on talent instead of somebody else, that other person doesn't get said opportunity. I wish society would start looking at athletes differently. They're still people, and you can judge them not because of what they do on the court, but because who they are as a person. John Jones in the UFC may be a great, phenomenal athlete and one of the most gifted fighters to ever live. But we know that he did drugs. We know that he's been caught for doing PEDs. There's tons of rumors out there about his infidelity. There's tons of rumors out there about other unethical and borderline criminal things that he's done. But yet, because he smiles and he looks like a nice guy, people like him. They're a fan of him. But yet we go out and criticize a guy like LeBron James because he left Cleveland and went to Miami and announced on national TV. When LeBron's never been in trouble off the court. LeBron's never been in trouble on the court. LeBron has raised tens of millions of dollars for charity, helping young people get education, helping better young people's lives. But yet people have this vitriolic hate for LeBron. But again, in 2018, because of social media, we drag people down because we don't like them or they play for another team. The people who we should really hate are the dirty people like Reuben Foster who do disgusting things and hurt people. That's the person you should hate. Topic number 2 on this week's Mutant Blitz podcast. So the Russo Brothers, who are the directors of the upcoming Marvel Infinity movie, came out with a post on Instagram showing Chris Evans, and they called him the Nomad. They didn't call him Captain America. They didn't really refer to him as Steve Rogers. And then on Twitter, they came out with another picture. It's of Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier holding Captain America's shield. The combination of these two posts actually gives us a lot of cues about what the future is for these characters and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's been a lot of speculation that Chris Evans, Steve Rogers, is going to die in Infinity War. And that theory is becoming more and more, like, instead of rumor, to be a plausible idea. For a couple reasons. One, because Chris Evans' contract after these current movies are done, this current state of Avengers movies that they've been shooting and releasing this year and next year, his contract is done. Chris Evans has made multiple comments to different media outlets about his desire to, he wants to direct more movies, he wants to get involved in the independent movie scene. And even though he loves the role and loves what he's done for his career, you know, he feels like it might be time to move on soon. So, showing off Bucky Barnes carrying Captain America's shield, looking very sad as well in this picture that the Russo brothers posted on Twitter, gives credence to the fan theory and something that happened in the comics, which was when Steve Rogers dies in the comics, Bucky Barnes goes on to pick up the mantle of Captain America. Well, we saw at the end of Black Panther that the Wakandans, they cleaned up all of the problems in his mind of all the years of brainwashing and the destruction that was done to his mind by Hydra. So that allows Sebastian Stan, who plays Bucky Barnes, i.e. Winter Soldier, i.e. the Winter Wolf, i.e. possible future Captain America, to be part of Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially since he has a plethora of appearances in upcoming movies still in his contract. Now, as for Steve Rogers, calling him the Nomad is also a nod to the comics. There was a phase in the comics where Captain America becomes so disillusioned with the American government that he drops the moniker of being of America. So he doesn't wear the red, white, and blue anymore. He doesn't have a red, white, and blue shield. He just calls himself either the Captain or the Nomad. And the other interesting thing about the Nomad is the fact that when Cap was the Nomad, he does work more behind the scenes. And that is also what he is doing in the movie. Remember, at the end of Captain America Civil War, he goes and picks up the people who were at the raft, lets them out of the prison, and they all are supposedly disappeared. And Joe Russo, in a podcast recently, explained that the spirit of the character of him becoming a Nomad embraces his journey throughout the MCU. Again, Infinity War and Avengers 4 is meant to be a launch point for Phase 4, to move past what all the stories that have come before them. And it would make sense that if Thanos does get more of the Infinity Stones and he does build up his power base in the Gauntlet, you see in the trailer Chris Evans fighting back. Maybe Thanos believes that Chris Evans' character, Steve Rogers, also known as the Nomad, also known as Captain America, is a threat. So maybe he targets him to kill first. Because he says, well, this guy can stand up to me. He is the biggest threat to me at this moment. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens in Avengers Infinity War, which is set to hit theaters April 27th. What the Russo brothers are telling you is Marvel has plans for Bucky Barnes beyond Avengers Infinity War, and that the fans make it what they want. If you're going to lose Chris Evans, at least you get to keep Bucky Barnes. Topic number 3 on this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz podcast. So, the NBA playoffs are set. They begin this Saturday. Now, I'm recording this podcast on Thursday night just to give full clarity on where I am in the news cycle. Obviously, some great finishes last night. The Timberwolves winning in overtime to get into the final seed. Sixers beating the Bucks to lock up the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. Bucks dropping to 7th. So a lot of interesting matchups in the first round of the playoffs. I just kind of want to give you my thoughts on the matchups and how I think the playoffs are going to play out. You start in the Eastern Conference, you have the Raptors versus the Wizards. The two split the series 2-2 during the regular season. I think this series could go 6-7 games because even though the Raptors are statistically a very good defensive team, they really only have one guy who gives a potent offensive punch, and that guy is DeMar DeRozan. Outside of DeRozan, I don't have a lot of faith in Lowry. He's shown in the past that he has come up short in the postseason. He averages less points in the postseason and a lower field goal percentage and lower three-point shooting percentage in the postseason than the regular season. And in Toronto, he has not been very consistent at all. So, outside of DeRozan, you have Lowry, you have Ibaka, you have Valanciunas. That's not a lineup I have a lot of confidence in. At least the Wizards have John Wall and Bradley Beal. They have Markieff Morris, who can do little things here and there. Kelly Oubre is a good player off the bench. Otto Porter is still a nice player in this league. I think the Wizards can give the Raptors a lot of problems. I'm still picking the Raptors to beat them, but I think that series is going to go 6-7 games because I think the Wizards have the firepower to make things difficult for the Raptors. And of course, the winner of the Raptors and Wizards will play the winner of the Cavs Pacers. LeBron is on a mission, and I think that LeBron right now is going to run to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think LeBron is clearly playing at a different level right now. He is motivated. He is inspired. He wants to prove a point. I think that this is arguably the best LeBron we've ever seen. I've said on this podcast, I think LeBron James should be the MVP. If not him, it should be Anthony Davis. The two have been absolutely amazing, and I'm looking forward to seeing if this is going to be a 5-game series or not. There's a possibility that the Pacers might lose in 5 games. Maybe 6 if they get some good shooting. I just don't have a lot of confidence that anybody on the Pacers is going to slow down LeBron. And as long as he gets some contributions from Kevin Love and from Jordan Clarkson and Rodney Hood and George Hill here and there, they can do well. Now, don't forget, people act like LeBron has a horrible supporting cast. It's not that it's a horrible supporting cast. It's just not on the same level as the teams he played with in Miami, or even when he had Kyrie Irving there. This is still a decent roster, and the guys they have around LeBron do support him in a way that elevates his game as well. And I think in the next round, it'll be the Raptors and the Cavs. And the Cavs will beat the Raptors in probably 6 games, and the Cavs will be in the conference finals. On the bottom side of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, 76ers, as I mentioned, they locked up that 3 seed. First time they've won over 50 games or more since Allen Iverson won the MVP and stepped over Tyronn Lue. Coincidence? I don't think so, because Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are super talents. If Embiid and Simmons stay healthy and they stay with the Sixers, they have a chance to go down as 2 of the 5 best players in Sixers franchise history. And they start on that quest in this series against Miami. Miami presents a very interesting challenge because offensively, Miami doesn't scare you. Yeah, Wade Ellington is a great 3-point shooter. Yeah, Hassan Whiteside, when he's motivated, can play well. And Dwayne Wade, for at least 2 games in this series, will turn back the clock and score over 20 points. But defensively is the issue for the Sixers with the Heat. The Heat are statistically a top 10 defense in the league. The Sixers average the most turnovers per game in the NBA this season. Can the Heat capitalize on turnovers? They've done it throughout the season. They can do it again. That's where guys like Goran Dragic and Rodney McGruger and James Johnson, these role players, can really step up and have a big series for the Heat. Is that if the Sixers turn the ball over, the Heat will take advantage of that. I still think the Sixers will win this series in 5-6 games, but I think the Heat are going to cause the Sixers a lot of problems, and that's good for them. They need to struggle in the postseason because they need to taste how difficult it is, and that's going to help them be better for the future. On the bottom end, you have the Celtics versus the Bucks. The Bucks have so much talent on the roster between Giannis Antetokounmpo and Jabari Parker and Chris Middleton and Thon Maker and Henson and Eric Bledsoe. But the Celtics play elite level defense. Without Kyrie Irving, this is a lesser team, yes. But between Tatum and Brown, when Marcus Smart comes back, you already have Marcus Morris playing well. You have Al Horford playing arguably some of the best basketball of his career. I think Boston has the defense to frustrate the athletes that the Bucks have. I think the Celtics win this series in possibly 6-7 games. Although I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks beat the Celtics. I think the Celtics are going to find a way to get through. So then you have the Celtics versus the Sixers in the next round. Again, another competitive series. I think the Celtics are going to lose. They're just going to run out of steam. They're not going to be able to handle the Sixers as well as they would if they have Kyrie. Because even a 75 to 80% Kyrie is going to be very effective with his handle, with his passing, with his ability to get to the basket. Kyrie is just a dynamic weapon. So I think Kyrie, if he was there, it would be the Celtics being the Sixers. But as of right now, I'm leaning toward the Sixers versus the Cavs in the conference finals. And I think that the Miami series, and whether it's Boston or the Bucks in the second round, is going to take a lot out of this young Sixers team. And it's going to become more and more evident that the spacing that the Sixers get from Ilyasova and Bellinelli and J.J. Redick, it's going to become easier and easier to game plan against them. It's going to be hard to stop Embiid and Simmons. But you look at teams in the past with young stars. What do? They say the young star is going to get his points. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to stop everybody else. Before Phil Jackson got to the Lakers, Shaq and Kobe couldn't get to the NBA Finals. They couldn't get past the Jazz. They couldn't get past the Spurs. All of a sudden, Phil, there with a more mature Kobe and a more mature Shaq, they get them their NBA titles. I think the Sixers are still a year or two away from being the elite team they can be. And I think that's why they would lose to the Cavs in the conference finals. I think the Cavs have more playoff experience. The Cavs are more war-tested. They know what it's like to go into the deep waters of the postseason. They know what it's like to have to dig deep and have to fight through. And like I said, LeBron's on a mission. LeBron wants to get to another NBA Finals. LeBron James is not going to let the Pacers or the Raptors or the Wizards or the Sixers stop him from getting to another NBA Finals. On the flip side of the bracket, I'm looking at the Rockets versus Timberwolves as a fascinating series. Not because I think the Timberwolves are going to beat the Rockets, but because the Timberwolves present a problem for the Rockets. Karl Anthony Towns has had a very good season. He is still a dynamic weapon, and with Jimmy Butler back on that team, they create a 1-2 punch that is going to be hard to stop. I think the Rockets are going to win this series in 6 games, but the Timberwolves are going to give them a test and a run for their money. The Rockets will not be able to breeze through that series, I don't think, which is going to be interesting because the 4-5 matchup is the Jazz and the Thunder, 2 very, very different teams. The Thunder are so hyper-dependent on Westbrook and his ability to create offense and be a force of nature. Paul George, does he step up in this series? Does Carmelo Anthony step up? How does Steven Adams handle the battle with Rudy Gobert of the Jazz? Who's going to stop Donovan Mitchell in this series? Who's going to slow down Ricky Rubio, who's having one of his best seasons of his career? And also the Jazz play elite level defense. I mentioned the Heat earlier. The Jazz and the Heat are 2 of the best defensive teams in the NBA. The Jazz will make the Thunder's life difficult. I'm leaning Thunder, but I think it's going to be a 6-7 game series with the Jazz, which is going to leave the Rockets facing a beat-up Thunder team. If the Thunder were facing the Rockets in the first round, or if the Thunder didn't have such a difficult matchup in the first round, if the Thunder were playing, let's say, the Pelicans, it would be a different series. But I think the Jazz are a bad matchup for a team like the Thunder, and it's going to drag it out. And I think the Rockets are going to end up in the conference finals, not because it's an easy Western Conference, but because the Thunder will be beat up and worn down by the time they face the Rockets. And if the Jazz get there, the Jazz just don't have the offense to keep up with the Rockets. To beat the Rockets, you got to do 2 things. You got to play defense, and you got to have the offensive firepower. Despite Tom Thibodeau being the head coach of the Timberwolves, they have been more offense than defense this year. The Jazz are more defense than offense. The Thunder, without Andre Roberson, don't have a defensive perimeter stopper. So I think the Rockets are getting to the conference finals. On the bottom side of the bracket, Portland's going to have their hands full with Anthony Davis. But I think Portland wins in 6 games. I think Anthony Davis does everything he can to help this team win. But I don't think the supporting cast around Anthony Davis is good enough to help them beat what the Blazers have, which is one of the best guard tandems in the NBA in Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. And Nurkic is a really good player too, and I think he's going to have a good series. I wouldn't be surprised if Mo Harkless has a couple clutch threes in this series as well. I see Portland making it to the second round. It won't be easy, but I think they're going to get there. It's a shame because the Pelicans had a different matchup. I think the Pelicans could maybe advance to the second round, but look, they're lucky just to get to the postseason. Like I said earlier, Anthony Davis needs to be in the MVP conversation. Alvin Gentry in the Coach of the Year conversation. But I think it's going to be Blazers to the second round. The Warriors are going to fight and claw with the Spurs, but the Spurs don't have the firepower to keep up for a full series with the Warriors, even without Steph Curry. Kevin Durant is still the second best player in the league. Klay Thompson is still a high-level, really good shooter. Draymond Green is still there. They still have all this talent on the Warriors. They're going to beat the Spurs. It's just not going to be a sweep. It may take them 5 or 6 games to get there. And then I think the Warriors, by the time they get second round, Steph Curry will be back. He'll be healthy. He'll be good to go. They'll beat the Blazers. That series will go 6, maybe possibly 7 games if the Blazers get the shooting that they hope they can get from their supporting players. And you get your showdown of the Warriors versus the Rockets. And what do the Warriors do that the Rockets don't do as well? The Warriors are the better defensive team. The Warriors are a deeper team than the Rockets. The Rockets are going to score some points in that series. There's going to be 1 or 2 games where the Rockets just go nuts because they have that kind of offense. But the Warriors are built for the playoffs. They're built to take on whatever's given to them. And I think you're going to see a Warriors-Cavs rematch in the NBA Finals with the Warriors winning in 5-6 games. And it's mostly because of injuries. I think that if Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving were healthy this year, it would be the Celtics and Warriors. I think that if Boogie Cousins was healthy, I think the Pelicans could beat the Warriors in the playoffs. And I think that the Pelicans could have beaten the Rockets in the playoffs if Boogie would have been there. I think that the Blazers are a player away. They are one player away. If Carmelo Anthony ever gets his head out of his, he could be a really great player. He's let his team down way too many times. I just don't have the confidence in the Thunder. And also in the Eastern Conference, the Sixers are 2 years away from being able to beat the Warriors as is right now. You look at the Bucks, their head coaching situation has not helped their development. The Wizards are a limited team. The Raptors, they're a nice defensive team, but they're so efficient and so well-rounded. That's why they had a great record this year, not because they're a great team. There's only a couple teams that have a chance against the Warriors. The Rockets have a chance because James Harden is a high-level elite scorer, and the Rockets have the offense to keep up with any other team in the NBA offensively, but they don't have the defense to slow down the Warriors. Meanwhile, the Cavs, they got LeBron James. That's always the X factor. But I just don't have the confidence in LeBron's supporting cast to be able to be as good as the Warriors supporting cast around Kevin Durant. LeBron's got Kevin Love and Rodney Hood and George Hill and Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance Jr. These are all players who can help get you to the NBA Finals, but they're not beating Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala off the bench. I just don't see it happening. So if they do win another championship, if you want to have a conversation about them being one of the greatest teams to ever win championships in NBA history, look, you want to put them in the conversation of the Kobe and Shaq Lakers and Jordan's Bulls and Magic's Lakers and Bird's Celtics. Yeah, we can have that quote-unquote dynasty conversation. But I think it's going to be a fascinating NBA playoffs. I think a lot of these series are going to be much more fascinating and intriguing and closer than they may look on the surface. Topic number 4 on this week's Mutant Blitz podcast. So, more information is coming out about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as he's going to be playing the anti-hero known as Black Adam. And this is interesting because the movie Shazam is currently in production, and Black Adam, who is a well-known antagonist of Shazam in the comics, he will not be the first villain for the Shazam movie. But Black Adam and Shazam are very much connected because they use the same power base. Black Adam is a character from another planet, and his sole goal is to protect and save, and he will do it by any means necessary. That's why in some ways he's an anti-hero, because in the comics he's a good guy sometimes he's a bad guy. And it's very interesting. The Rock is the guy who gets cast for. First of all, he physically looks like he could be Black Adam. So at least physically they got it right. The Rock come out and said that, the script is in, and he's very excited about it. It looks like they're going to start shooting the film either later this year or next year. So it looks like more and more this movie is going to come out in 2019 or 2020. Now, we know the Shazam movie is coming out April 5th, 2019. Black Adam hasn't got an official release date, so I think that means it's going to be more likely 2020. And they'll probably link him somehow to the rest of the DC universe. Obviously, there's a few different ways they can go with a Black Adam movie. They're presenting him as an anti-hero. They don't want him to be a pure villain as he was at times in the comic. If anybody's ever watched the Riddick movies, the Chronicles of Riddick, Vin Diesel playing the character who is an anti-hero, Black Adam is very much like that character. A guy who's reluctant to help, but he's doing what he has to do to protect. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Whereas Riddick is more of like a vagabond. He's running from the law all over the place. Black Adam has a purpose to be, as angry and as forceful as he is. And even though he's a reluctant hero, he can be a hero. And I think that's a interesting connection you're going to have with The Rock portraying a character who is, complex. And he's deeper than some of these other superheroes. I hope they get the script right, because Black Adam is a character who even, the casual comic book fan or even the intermediate comic fan, he's misunderstood because he has a much deeper history than just his handful of battles with people like Superman and with Shazam. He's a guy who actually does do some heroic things in the comics. And I think bringing in Dwayne Johnson to play the role is going to allow you to explore that side of him. Again, this is about 2 years away. There's only so much they can do to accelerate the production. If it does come out in 2019, I'm going to guess, considering the amount of effects they're going to have to do for this movie and how much is going to be involved with this movie, I could see it coming out in the fall or even later in 2019 if he does get to 2019. Topic number 5 on this week's Mutant Blitz podcast. I want to touch on the NFL draft because it's only a couple weeks away. And, again, the quarterbacks are consuming the conversation when it comes to the draft. Obviously, the quarterback position is the most scrutinized, the most hyper-focused, the most discussed position in all of sports. And even though last year it was 3 of the 4 quarterbacks who made it to the championship games were Case Keenum, Blake Bortles, and Nick Foles, we still focus so much on the quarterback because many times the quarterback can change the fortunes of an entire franchise. And there is no clear-cut number 1 in this year's draft. It really depends on your perspective. Where are you coming from? What are your prerequisites for the quarterback position in this year's draft? Josh Rosen coming out and saying that he thinks he's the best quarterback. Sam Darnold saying, I want to do my pro day in the rain and the bad weather to show Cleveland that I can be a quarterback in their city. You have Josh Allen being praised by every scout as, if not one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks of the last few years. You have Lamar Jackson being compared to Michael Vick. You have Baker Mayfield. People have questions about, is he big enough to play quarterback in the NFL? Is he athletic to play quarterback in the NFL? Is he overrated? Is he underrated? And then you have guys like Mason Rudolph, where people say, listen, he's a great kid. He's got great character. He's got great work ethic. But does he have the it factor? So there's all these questions about these quarterbacks. And my question for everyone out there, the draft experts, the front office people, the people who are picking sides of who is the best quarterback, who's most likely to be a bust or not. My question for all of you is this. If we took away the names and we took away the uniforms and I just presented you with film of just the players, removing bias, removing everything you think you know, do you really think you'd have the same opinion of these guys? You probably wouldn't. Because in many times in life, we are jaded by the predisposed stereotypes we have about athletes. I mentioned the issue I have with the NFL and the linebackers earlier with Reuben Foster and Vontaze Burfict. Guys who get opportunity after opportunity, not because they should have those opportunities, but because people can't let go of how talented they are. And, it's, you're too big to fail concept. You're so talented, we have to give you another opportunity. We have to give you another shot. I'll be the coach that puts you on the straight and the narrow. We have these predisposed ideas that a certain player is going to be better than everybody else. Not because he actually can play football, but because he looks great at a pro day. Or a guy is going to be great because he runs a fast 40-yard dash. Whether it's a guy like a Jamarcus Russell or a Darius Hayward-Bay or a Kyle Bowler or a Ryan Leaf or a Trent Richardson or an Aaron Curry, there's all of these guys who have been drafted high, who everyone said they're going to be great, and they got them all wrong. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they can actually play football or not. To me, the game tape is above all else. Things like the 40-yard dash and the agility and the pro days, they can only tell you more about the player. They shouldn't be the reason why you do or don't draft a guy. Remember, Drew Brees didn't have the arm strength. Russell Wilson wasn't tall enough. Tom Brady didn't have the body to play the quarterback position in the NFL. I'm pretty sure all 3 of them are really good quarterbacks, and at least 2 of those 3 are going to the Hall of Fame. Everyone loved Ryan Leaf and Tim Couch and Akili Smith and Joey Harrington and Jamarcus Russell and Kyle Bowler's physical tools, Jake Locker. There's a laundry list of these quarterbacks who people looked at and it had nothing to do with their ability to play the game. That is my biggest beef with Josh Allen. The more people brag about him, the less it's about his ability to play football. It's about his arm strength, his size, his athleticism. There's plenty of quarterbacks who have size and ability and athleticism, but it doesn't mean they can play in the NFL. Listen, I was harsh on Mitch Trubisky last year, but it wasn't because I thought Mitch Trubisky was going to be the worst quarterback in that draft. It was because I didn't think that he should be drafted ahead of a Pat Mahomes or of Deshaun Watson. I thought Mitch Trubisky wasn't ready for the NFL. And you saw last year why he wasn't ready. Because he still didn't understand how to read defenses. He was making poor decisions in the pocket. The accuracy wasn't there. He just wasn't ready. And the Bears did him a massive disservice. Now, Matt Nagy can be to him what Sean McVay was to Jared Goff, which is a guy who brings out the best in him. So there is still hope for Mitch Trubisky. Josh Allen to me is different. There's no other intangibles about him except for his physical abilities. And they say that he works really hard. To me, that doesn't really matter. Christian Ponder worked hard. People forget that Christian Ponder, the reason why he was drafted so high is because he worked his way up the draft chart. When he came out of college, I heard everybody saying his last year in college, well, he's probably a third or second round pick. He busted his tail to get where he got. Now, he just didn't have the success of a first-round quarterback. The infatuation with Josh Allen to me is more about his physical ability than the questions I have. The games where he had 0 touchdowns and multiple interceptions. Nobody has answers for those games. Every answer I hear is he looked good. The postseason bowl competitions, he looked good on his pro day. A lot of guys look good in those situations. There's a lot of quarterbacks who looked good in controlled environments. But if he's drafted by the Giants, if he's drafted by the Jets, if he's drafted by the Browns, that's not ideal conditions. The Broncos, not ideal conditions. Josh Allen never threw over 60% in a season. And in the Iowa game, an Iowa defense that was solid, not elite, he struggled. I'm going to say again, I look at a quarterback based on his game tape, not based on the superlatives, his arm strength, his size. That's why I like guys like Baker Mayfield. That's why I like guys like Josh Rosen and Lamar Jackson. I'm wishy-washy, though, on Mason Rudolph. I'm wishy-washy on Sam Darnold. I don't have a lot of faith in Josh Allen, but I love Quentin Flowers. I think Mike White is interesting. There's no clear-cut guy in this draft. The further along we get in the process, I had said from the beginning I thought Josh Rosen was my number 1 quarterback on my board. Now, I'm going to give you my official draft board and all the information when we get closer to the actual draft, which is, as of I'm recording this, 2 weeks from tonight. But to me, the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft are Darnold and Rosen. And it mostly has to do with the fact that both of them have shown me on the field their ability to run an offense, their ability to command a huddle, their ability to win their team games. There's a part of me that wants to say Darnold's the number 1 quarterback because I think he has the highest potential of all these guys. But I can't get over the turnovers. I can't get over the inability to go through progressions. I can't get over the fumble issues. It's troubling for me. It sticks in my mind. Just like I'm stuck on Josh Allen's inaccuracy in his bad games. Josh Rosen had some games that were amazing. And not just the Texas A&M game. There were plenty of games where he carried his team back. He led his team to victory. He went through the progressions. He moved in the pocket. He did everything he had to do to help his team win. But Rosen's great downfall is the injury history. That could be what makes him a bust. What's Baker Mayfield's shortcoming? Baker Mayfield's shortcoming is going to be if he goes to the wrong situation, the wrong team, he's going to be misunderstood. He's not going to be given the opportunities other guys get given. What's going to be Lamar Jackson's downside? If he goes to a team that doesn't let him sit. If he can sit behind a Drew Brees with the Saints or a Phillip Rivers with the Chargers, he has a chance of developing into a really, really good, if not elite quarterback. But if he goes to a team like the Cardinals or the Browns, he may get rushed into the lineup and he'll get exposed. Josh Rosen can be drafted by the Jets and win a quarterback competition because his football IQ is that high. But none of these guys are in the mold of an Andrew Luck or a Carson Wentz. None of these guys are in the mold of a Eli Manning or a Phillip Rivers. I think these guys are much closer to Jared Goff in potential, or Jameis Winston, or even Cam Newton. I think these guys all have upside. But like I said, I like Quentin Flowers too, and he's probably a third-round pick. Because Quentin Flowers can do the same thing all these other guys can do. The arm strength, the athleticism, the ability to lead his team back. He's showing you everything on the field to be a great quarterback, but he's just not elite physically or talent-wise, or they'll find something wrong with him. Mason Rudolph, I mentioned him earlier. He's a wild card in all this because I think Rudolph's work ethic and his arm strength does translate to the NFL level. He may never be an all-pro quarterback, but Mason Rudolph could be a Kirk Cousins. He could be better than Andy Dalton. I don't think that's far-fetched. Again, another guy who's got to go to the right situation. And if the Patriots are seriously looking at him and targeting him, is there really a better situation to go to than sitting behind Tom Brady and being mentored and tutored by the likes of Josh McDaniels? A guy who you can give credit for the development of Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy Garoppolo. Look, Garoppolo went to the 49ers. He's considered a franchise quarterback now for them. Jacoby Brissett was probably the only quarterback who could survive the disaster that was the Colts season last year and still put up decent numbers throughout the year. And those are both a credit to Josh McDaniel and that coaching staff. And I think Mason Rudolph is just as good coming out of college as Jimmy Garoppolo was. With these quarterbacks, it all depends on how you view them. If you just strip away everything, stop worrying about how tall they are, stop worrying about how far they can throw the ball, stop worrying about their 40 time, stop worrying about how fast they are, how do they process information, how accurate are they, can they play the game at a high level? Those are three things. Oh, and number 4, can they lead their team in moments of crisis and clutch moments where their team really needs them? That is the difference between the quarterback that will be great and the quarterback that will fall apart. Topic number 6 on this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz podcast, the acquisition of the 20th Century Fox Studios by the Walt Disney Company is expected now to be closed by the summer of next year, according to Fox president Peter Rice. Yes, the merger that will bring together the two powerhouse studios, allowing all the rights for Marvel Comics to return to Marvel Studios, which is under the Disney, is expected to get done next summer. For Fox's president to come out and say that tells you there was no actual competition from Comcast in the process. This is directly about Disney acquiring a certain amount of the company's assets. And I think part of it has to do with, you look at the enormity of the different Fox ventures, from not just the movie studios that Disney is highly interested in, but also the entertainment side, the news side, the publishing ventures. This looks like it's going to be a purchase of about 70 to 85 billion. That's funny, because 75 to 85 billion is the approximate amount of money that Disney and Marvel has netted from the Marvel Cinematic movies pre-Black Panther. Very, very interesting. Yeah, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that have been produced by Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, by Avengers 1 and 2, by all 3 Captain America movies, by Doctor Strange, by all 3 Thor movies. That's hundreds of billions of dollars that have been given into the coffers of Marvel and Disney. And it's convenient they have that money set aside so they could buy Fox Studios. Now, if you go by the timetable, so let's say this gets done by July of next year, and then Disney says they expect the regulatory process of approval to take between 12 to 18 months. So I'm figuring at minimum we're talking about July 2020 that it's officially Fox under the Disney banner. So that timetable gives us two specific interesting conversations. Number one, we know that production is already underway with the next X-Men movie, with the current cast of characters from the X-Men Apocalypse film. So it looks like that movie will still get done, and there won't be any interference in letting that movie finish. Number two, that gives Marvel Studios a 3-year heads up. I'm saying 3 years because I'm saying summer of 2020, at minimum, this will get done. Or we'll say at the end of the 2020 year. So I'm talking about 2 to 3 years for Marvel to start making plans. What do we want to do with the X-Men? What do we want to do with the Fantastic Four? How do we explain them into our universe? What kind of scenarios do we come up with? And there's so many ways they can explain it. There's so many ways they can do it, especially with Phase 4 not being set in stone yet. All the Marvel movies that have happened have all been leading up to this month's Infinity War movie and the next Avengers 4 movie. And after Avengers 4, that's the stepping stone for the next phase. For Spider-Man 2, and for Doctor Strange 2, and Black Panther 2, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But we also know that there's a bunch of film dates that have been reserved by Marvel Studios for 2020 and 2021 and beyond that have all been unnamed. That's point number 2. So now we know why Marvel has all these unplanned dates, because they can start figuring out, do we put an X-Men movie here? Do we have solo movies? Maybe Storm gets her own movie. We know Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, is getting her own movie that comes out next year. What do they do with the Wolverine question? Obviously, Hugh Jackman says he's getting too old and doesn't want to do it anymore. So who do they recast for that? Who do they keep James McAvoy as the Professor X, or do they recast that? There's all kinds of questions that they can work with and play with here, and they got 2-3 years to do it. This is a money train. As long as they keep doing it right, is never going to stop anytime soon, especially since DC is struggling to get their feet under them. If they ever get their feet under them and they make this a movie war with Marvel, that'll up the ante for Marvel even more. But now we know, according to Fox President Peter Rice, that this acquisition is going to go down in the summer of next year. And if it takes 12 to 18 months for the approval process, I'm thinking 2021, 2022, we get the X-Men and the Fantastic Four in the Marvel Cinematic TV and movie universe. Thanks everyone for listening to this week's edition of the Mutant Blitz podcast. If you like this week's podcast, hit a like, hit that subscribe button, and appreciate you coming back each and every week. If you have any thoughts or comments about the topics discussed on this week's podcast, drop it down in the comments section below, and I'll catch you again next week. Each and every week, hot topics in sports and in the comic book, TV, and movie universe, all in one place right here with your host, me, Josh Hennig, on the Mutant Blitz podcast.